Hello, welcome to Code Rage. My name is Ian Barker and I'm from a company called repeatinformation.com. You can find out more about me at about.me/Ian Barker. This presentation is going to be about your first iOS enterprise app. I assume if you're watching this is going to be your first. And we're going to go from compile to final release. Just talk about the steps that you go through to get there. What is the Apple iOS Enterprise Program? It's a scheme that allows companies to develop in-house iOS apps for use by their own staff and contractors. In fact, there's no restriction other than the fact that you issue them from your enterprise. It doesn't use the normal Apple App Store, so your apps are actually distributed in alternative ways rather than to the general public. The design of the program is that you are some large company and you have got a need to have some iOS applications, maybe on an iPhone or an iPad used by your staff, or iPads, and that's what this program is designed to fulfill. It costs money to join. It's not free, of course. You pay this fee yearly, and when I say you, I mean the enterprise. It's a specific fee for the enterprise, the organization or the charity. And just in case you think, hey, I can release apps and not have to worry about restrictions on the App Store and going through the App Store and Apple taking cuts out of my own money, the companies are verified by Apple, so you do actually have to be a real live company. They will run some checks on you. You don't have to be the top flight blue chip company. You do have to have things like actually physically existing and having some form of legal existence. It's a fairly low bar. They're not going to look at too much, but they will check that you exist. So you can't just randomly invent a company and join the program. Why would you want to do this? Well, this is a good question. You can create apps with Delphi and C++ that are released to the App Store. So why would you want to join the enterprise program? Well, it does mean that as a developer, it's an alternative way of earning income. You can create apps for corporate customers, for example, health organizations or large chain stores, or indeed anybody who might want to have apps but aren't necessarily developers themselves. You may be a developer in-house and working for that corporate, or you might be, like myself, an independent developer. One good thing as a developer is it can be very lucrative, much more than the App Store. If you think about the prices of apps in the Apple App Store, the average price can be anything from $1.99 to maybe, if you're lucky, $4.99 and perhaps even $9.99. But even Apple's products are down at that kind of level. You've got to sell an awful lot to pay your bills. Things like your mortgage and rent and office equipment, taxes. You've got to sell hundreds, maybe thousands to break even on what would be a normal day job. With this kind of development, you can charge for your development labor, the actual time involved in creating the application for the company. You can provide consultancy and charge consultancy fees, advising them on the best kind of route. You tend to get people who will sketch a little idea off and say, hey, we really think it would be cool to have an application that would do X. And sometimes you have to encourage them what's possible on an iPhone or an iPad. It's not a super duper multi processor machine, but can be quite tight on memory and resources. Technical support, obviously, and training, and of course you can get repeat business. Most of the customers I develop for, the corporate customers, have got several applications, and what tends to happen is that you write one application. If you do a good job, you will find that people come back and say, hey, that was really cool. I don't suppose you could do a version of the app that does this. Repeat business, can't beat it. And the best thing of all is no royalties to Apple. Every single cent that you charge for that application or the development of that application goes to you. Apple do not take a cut on enterprise apps. There are some exceptions. If you belong to if your customer belongs to one of their bulk schemes and these apps are chargeable through the App Store as well, then they can charge fees. But generally speaking, nothing to Apple. And there's no approval process either, and no guidelines. The application can do pretty much whatever you want it to do, and you don't have to wait for Apple to approve it. It's really down to your enterprise customer or your peers, if you work for that enterprise, on whether they accept it and think it's okay and fulfills the business needs that you've been asked to fulfill. This is a good thing because obviously it means that you don't have to wait for Apple to come back and say, oh, there's some obscure restriction that you haven't actually fulfilled. You're supposed to have this on it and you're not supposed to have that on it. You can pretty much do what you want, put advertising in it, put subscriptions in it and ask for additional information. No guidelines. The downside is, of course, that you can accidentally cause havoc that maybe would have been caught during Apple's approval process, their automated review and approval process. So really, it's a good and a bad thing. The buck stops with you, so to speak. You get it wrong, you're in trouble. How are the apps distributed? Well, because they don't go through the Apple iStore, the Apple App Store, then you need alternative methods. You can email the packages to customers, or they can be emailed from the central head office or something like that. You can distribute them via Wi-Fi, and you can also drop them onto the devices via iTunes. There are enterprise provisioning tools, which we'll talk about. There's a link to those later on in this presentation. Or you can use, as we're going to in this presentation, a specially crafted web page. It just contains a little bit of link. Anybody can do it. You could open it up in Notepad or TextEdit or something like that and create this web page. It's not that difficult. Updates for the apps are really easy. Basically, as soon as you decide that there's some improved kind of functionality or correct a bug or something like that, or Apple go and release a whole load of new devices and formats and you need to support those, you code your changes, sign it with your appropriate sign-in certificates, and then distribute it however you distributed it before, or even alternative methods. It's dead easy. No waiting for the thing to go live on the App Store. What's the difference between an enterprise app and a normal app? An enterprise app is an application that's been signed using a specific Apple Enterprise Certificate. You'll only get one of these if your corporate customer, or you if you're an employee, gets approved by Apple to join the Enterprise Development Program. You can then receive an Enterprise Certificate which allows you to create applications that belong or are signed by your enterprise. The application that we create in Delphi or C++ is an ad hoc application. It is not designed to go through the store, so you choose the ad hoc option, which we'll talk about. The good or main difference here is that it's not tied to specific devices. When you go into the certification process and create an app ID with an ad hoc application, normally have to tell Apple what devices are going to actually run these applications. With Enterprise, you don't do that. It can go on any device at all, not a problem. And of course, we can create these applications in Embarcadero products, Delphi, C++, and RAD Studio. What do we need? The company or organization needs to be registered with Apple in their Enterprise Developer Program at the link that you see on the screen there. It costs, in American dollars, $299 per year. If you go to the developer program and look at that link in your own country, if you're not in the US, you should see the currency values in there in your own currency. It's roughly equivalent. The company have to provide a DUNS number. And a DUNS number is a bit like a credit reference, I suppose, for a company rather than an individual. It's not really checking that you're creditworthy. It is checking that you are in existence and actually exist as a corporate entity. If you're a sole trader or an individual running a company, in the US you would need some kind of TIN number or something like that, a tax identification number. Same in the UK and other areas. You will need to actually be recognised as some form of trading organisation. Go to the link that I say there that says get a DUNS number and register. It takes a little while. Someone with legal authority for the organisation, like a company secretary or a director, must endorse the paperwork and actually sign a legal agreement with Apple to say, yes, this is what we want to do. Yes, we will adhere to the strictures in the program. Once the organisation has been approved, they'll receive an email from Apple telling them to log in and go ahead and assign members to the team. If it's your organisation, then obviously you assign your development people. If the organisation is someone that you are contracted to or providing help to, or however you want to look at it, as an independent developer, then you'll need to get them to add you onto their team before you can do anything. When you log into the member center, if there's a team set up and a developer set up, you need to actually pick the team for the enterprise. In this case, as you can see in my example, this is one of my customers, the Visiting Nurse Association of the Midlands. That's a company in the US. And after you sign in this case, as you can see, Mark Mann is the agent. That means he's the person in charge and adds people to the team. If you are an independent developer, that agent is going to need to add you in there so that you can actually provide applications to the enterprise. You will need to create a number of certificates, distribution certificates. You need to create at least an iOS distribution certificate for the enterprise. This is not the same as the distribution certificates you might be used to as developers, so that you can actually create ad hoc applications or applications for the App Store. Even if you've got one of those, you'll still need to create a new one specifically for the enterprise, and you have to be logged in as part of the enterprise team to do that. If you're an independent developer, you'll need to actually include your development certificate as well. And if you've got apps, one or more apps, you'll need to create provisioning profiles for the apps as well. You must note this information down because you're going to need it later in Delphi. Right, what we need to do then is first go to the developer.apple.com portal, and we need to create some certificates for this application. First things first, choose which team you're on. If you are a independent developer, you will may be offered one or more teams. In this case, I'm going to choose just the main enterprise team. Go in here and choose certificates. These are the development certificates, and you need to copy your enterprise certificate down, because we're going to use this distribution certificate later. Okay, if you haven't created yet, look it up in the Apple Help. There's plenty of information about that. Next thing we need to do is create an app ID specifically for our app. So we're going to here and say, right, we're going to call this Code Rage 9 Test App. Why not? The bundle ID, we're going to give it a specific one of VNA cares dot we'll call this Code Rage Test App 1. Okay, make a note of this because you are going to need this later. Not this specific one, you're going to have your own one to note down, but effectively it should be your domain back to front, the vnacares.org actually, but vnacares.com, and then the name of your app. This has got to be unique bundle ID amongst your apps and unique amongst your enterprise. You can also choose what services you're going to use. In this case, I'm not going to use anything because we're just going to do a simple test app. Okay, I'm going to just copy that to the clipboard because I'm going to use that later. Bing! And there we have our app created. I'm going to delete all of this later, so if you're rapidly trying to write stuff down so that you can use it and hack me, it's not going to work. Okay. Click on submit, and after a couple of seconds, all being well, if Apple are actually up and running and doing their thing, given that they keep releasing stuff, there is my application. Okay, you can create app groups and all the rest of it. This works pretty much the same way as everything else. We are going to create a provisioning profile as well, and we're going to do this for an an in-house application. Click on continue. It automatically chooses the one we've already just had. Click on continue. Yes, it's this team. What's the name of this profile? What are we going to call this? The Code Rage 9 test app. Boom. When we click on download, this is actually going to give us a mobile provision file. This file's quite important, and this actually needs to go on your Mac. We're just going to save it for there for now. Okay, and we're going to click on done. Okay, so the certificates are saved off onto my Mac. I'm now going to create an application to use them and actually do something with it. So I'm going to choose new multi-device application, and we'll just go with the blank application. Choose iOS because that's what we're interested in. Our target platform will also be iOS, and we'll just get it to create the iPhone format because we like that. Of course, it could be bigger because of iPhone 6, but let's go with this for now. Right, what I'm going to do, put on a T label. I'm just going to do a simple application, nothing special. Line to the top. Put some text in. We are going to say Code Rage 9. Because as we all know, we're not at all bothered. Vertical alignment, horizontal alignment, let's just say center. And let's choose a T image. Like that. And again, let's just align that to the client, just so it looks pretty. Go to our multi-res bitmap, which I love because it makes life a lot easier. And because it's near Halloween, let's choose a brilliant picture of David I that I stole off his website shamelessly, off of his blog. And that's it. That's all we're going to get it to do, is to just display a really crazy kind of picture, and that's it. Now, what do we need to do next? Well, first things first, go to project options. And this is where we start to use that information that I said to you, note down, because you need to make a note of it. The first things first is we need to put in the bundle name. And if you have got a good memory or you were making notes, you will remember that I put in a bundle name of the VNA cares code rage test app 1. Okay, that's our bundle name from our iOS app IDs. The other thing we need to do is put in the bundle display name. This is the name that will actually appear below the icon when it's installed on the phone. You haven't got an awful lot of space on a phone. On an iPad you've got a little bit more, but still not much. So keep it something short. Let's call it CR test app 1. Whoops, 1. Okay. All good so far. We don't want to change the build number. That's actually quite important. Provisioning. Go to all configurations. I should have actually done that in there. It's annoying. Oops. Oh. How's that? That's better. It's all live. It's all live. Right. So provisioning. We need to change it to say ad hoc. Our distribution certificate is the distribution certificate we set up for our enterprise, and in this case for me it happens to be this. For you it will be something different. The certificate, the mobile provision profile, is the name that you created before, if you recall, which in my case will be in this directory, and it will be called code underscore rage underscore 9 underscore test underscore app dot mobile provision. Okay. Yep, that looks good. Okay. Okay, so I've saved my project with the same name as the bundle ID, Code Rage Test App 1. Now we're going to actually get it ready to go. First things first, release configuration. Quite important. Secondly, we need to choose ad hoc. Even though it's an enterprise app, it is an ad hoc app, although it doesn't contain the built-in IDs that you get in a normal ad hoc app. And we need to say build all projects. 0 errors, always a good thing. And the next step is project deployment. This is actually quite important because what this does is actually builds all the resources together into the IPA bundle, ready for us to actually ship it out to our website or TestFlight or wherever we're going to do it. So select this one that says deploy, release configuration, everything looks good, let's do it. And see this path here? This will become quite important in a second. Talk amongst yourselves. Hey, my Mac is MacBook Pro mid 2010 13-inch for those that need to know. It's got a hybrid drive in it and 8 GB of RAM. Machine I'm using, I'm not using a virtual machine for the Windows version, I'm using Windows 8.1. It's a sunny day and not raining. What else can I say? And it's deployed, and success means yes, we've done it. Now if I go into here and pull this over so that you can see it, here's the matrix is just the name of my PC because I'm a bit of a geeky nerd type. In the documents, Embarcadero Studio Projects, name of my project, okay, my project directory. Underneath there you see the usual DPRs and DPRJs. Choose iOS device, choose release, and this here is the golden file that you need. Okay, this is the IPA that you will actually be putting up on your website. Right, well now we've actually got that app, we need to distribute it and send it out to people in the enterprise. There's a number of different ways of doing that. You can use TestFlight. If any of you have come across this, you'll know how cool it is. Go to testflightapp.com. This has actually been bought by Apple now. That's how cool it is. You can also use Apple's Enterprise Management Tool, which allows you to decide which apps are going to go onto the iOS devices and control them and things like that, and basically lock people down from doing naughty things they shouldn't with enterprise equipment. Or you can distribute it in ad hoc ways, like a special web page link, which is what we're going to do. To distribute via a web page, you need to have some magic HTML in your page. You'll see the text I've highlighted here, ITMS-services, : // This is some HTML loveliness that Safari on iOS devices understands. When it sees that link and tries to process it, it recognizes that this is going to be an application which should be processed and installed. It'll check what certificates are on the devices already, and if there aren't any specific certificates that come out of this plist file, which we're referring to here, it'll actually go off, check with Apple and check with the certification authorities, make sure everything's valid, and allow you to install it just via this link. It's pretty cool. To actually get to the point where that will work is not quite as straightforward as you would think, unfortunately. Of course it never is. There's quite a lot of steps, and I've actually put some of them onto a URL here. Later on, if you go to tinyurl.com/coderage9-enb, and the capitalization is important, so capital C, capital R, capital I, and capital B. There are some sort of additional notes and also some links as well, so you don't have to remember all these and try and note them down during the presentation. You are going to need the following files up on your web server. You need the .mobile provision file. You need the .ipa file. This is essentially the same as a .exe if you're used to Windows development. The IPA file contains a package of information, and part of that package includes things like certificates for the actual application. It is a package that's understood by iOS and is unfolded into the application running on your device. You also need a 57 by 57 pixel PNG file. This is for an icon. When you install the application, it will display this PNG whilst it's trying to install the application. Assuming everything goes well, that then gets replaced with the actual icon for the app itself. You'll also need a specially crafted .plist file. Now, there is going to be an example up on that URL that you see there, my example URL, which will tell you what to put in your plist file. And if I get time before CodeRage, I'm also going to write a little utility that will actually create that for you, so that you don't have to think. I had to think about it. I read lots of very clever people talking about how to do it, and then came up with a method that works a little bit for me. There are sample files at that URL as well. One important gotcha was in iOS 7.1, Apple silently changed the requirement for web servers that are serving up these .ipa packages, and now the web server must support HTTPS. This means if you've got shared hosting with someone like GoDaddy or FastHost in the UK, you must install an SSL certificate and enable SSL. If SSL is not enabled and HTTPS part of your URL is not working, or you are not serving the app up from HTTPS, then it will not install on anything that's 7.1, iOS 7.1 upwards. And this is one of the little things that Apple just changed without telling anybody, and of course all of a sudden all of our apps wouldn't install on devices with the new 7.1. A little bit annoying, just like when they changed the linker and didn't tell anybody, including the Embarcadero and myself and a few other people who got caught by surprise. Okay, let's go and install it on a device and see how it works. Okay, so uploaded on my website are the following files: the IPA that we created earlier in the compiler, and a specially crafted plist, which don't have time to show you what to do, but go to the website and have a look at what's going on there. And a couple of images, these are just PNGs, and a specially crafted web page with that ITMS services thing that I pointed out to you before. And that's all up on my web server now. If I go into my phone, I can go to my specially crafted web page, which just happens to be this one, and as you can see, my little PNG file is there. And if I click on David I's face, it will say Alex Ike is my web server that's serving up the SSL page. Do I want to install it? Yes, I do. And if I go down to here, you will see it loading on my app, and as I told you before, the graphics that come down are the placeholders. And you remember we called it CR app, CodeRage app, number one. And when I click on it, there it is running, CodeRage 9. Hope you enjoyed the demonstration. Okay, now just go through and talk about a few tips. For your web page, I really do recommend you put some analytics on there, just so that you know how many people are downloading the app, where they're downloading it from, and it helps spot if there's a problem. There isn't anything in the apps really, unless you put it in to track what's going on, and whoever's got that IPA file and whoever knows that link can install the application. There is no restriction. They don't really have to belong to the enterprise, although they should do. So if that link gets out and you haven't secured it properly, you could be in trouble, and analytics may be the only thing that'll tell you what's happening. If you're an independent developer and you're being paid based on how your application's working, you're definitely going to want to put some metrics in the app as well and on the web page. Definitely secure the web page, via Active Directory if it's an internal web page, or some other method to make sure that people can't just get to that link or spider it and then grab your application. You need to also have a not available or 404 type thing, or we're down for maintenance. And it's got to work for mobile, so it's got to be suitable for iPhone kind of format or iPad format. Not lots of complicated stuff on it. The reason being, from time to time, you're going to want to change your application, maybe upgrade it, or maybe you suddenly find that there's some breaking change that's come out in iOS 10 in the future or whatever it is, and your apps won't work. What you don't want is people going off and installing it, especially if you find there's some horrific bug that deletes all their data and you want to stop it happening. Make the web page simple. There's an example on the website. Nice and easy, so that the phones can display it when it's even on 3G, because if they've got the phone set up, they can install the application on site using just 3G, even if there's no Wi-Fi. And as far as updates are concerned, you do need to put some kind of update mechanism or push notifications in your app to notify people that the update's there. You're on your own because the App Store's not involved, and it won't come down by magic through some kind of iOS updates or application updates. You actually have to push them down yourself or notify people to come and get them. The other thing, of course, to remember is once an enterprise app goes out, anybody with that IPA can install it. So you really want to make sure it's secure. It's not as randomly risky as it sounds, but it is worth making sure that you're keeping on top of it. And finally, some useful links. The top link is a tiny URL that goes to my own website. There's a page on there dedicated to Code Rage 9 with a copy of this set of slides, and also some links to other useful information. And as ever, I should mention that I stood on the shoulders of giants, and some of the people that were helpful are either linked here, or I should also mention Brian Long and Dave Nottage, who both mentioned this, some of the information you see here. Some of the links are a little bit out of date, but in particular Dave Nottage's site is there, delphi.radsoft.com.au. Also, you're going to need to, before you do anything, is get a Dun & Bradstreet number, and that's the very first link. Your enterprise needs to get the get a Duns number, .html, which you see on the screen, and after that you then need to register with the enterprise scheme and pay your $299 to kick it all off. Otherwise you can't really do any of this. If you need further help, I encourage you to go to forums.embarcadero.com. You'll see me there hanging out, and also various other Delphi types. It's a good place to ask questions, get information from your peers, other people that are using Delphi and C++ and App Builder and all the other products. Anyway, I hope it's been useful. My name's Ian Barker and the company is repeatinformation.com. Have fun with the rest of the conference.
Alf asked about academic research institutions, etc., if there were discounts for charities and whatnot.
Apple basically don't list that on their site, so I'm guessing there aren't any. And in fact, a couple of the people that I've developed for were charities, and they got no discounts at all from Apple. So I don't know, maybe someone knows better, but they don't list anything like that on their website. So I'm guessing no discounts.
Must all users belong to the organization, or can the org provide the app to its customers?
And let me just see, I made the mistake of looking down at the list of questions and get distracted. There's so many of them. Sorry, what was the question again?
The question was,
must they all belong to your organization?
Yeah.
No, in fact, the way that the wording is listed on Apple's website is that the people are members of the organization. One app that I developed, which was for the people I think I showed on my slides there, they are visiting nurses. That means they go into people's houses and do things like look after people who have had operations or are looking for long-term care, or maybe hospice care in the home. And they have a number of different people like doctors and physiotherapists who are actually contracted to them and not employees. And they use these apps, and as far as I'm aware, that's completely okay as far as Apple's concerned, because they are working on behalf of the organisation. So if, for example, you had contracted delivery drivers or something like that who was going to use an app, then I think that would fall within the scope of members of the organisation. But I have had a lot of people ask questions here on this list here saying, well, does that mean I can just give it to anybody? Why can't I just register my organisation and then give the apps out to my customers? That's not how it works. And in fact, they specifically, Apple specifically say not to do that. And I'm pretty certain they would, if they catch you, and I don't know how they would, but if they catch you and they rescind your certificate, your apps will stop working straight away. So it's about legality, I think, as much as anything.
Yeah, they're what technically you might get away with versus what you legally.
Correct.
Just because you might be able to get away with it doesn't mean you should do it. Are all these steps needed before developing and debugging the apps?
No. In fact, you, particularly with Delphi and C++ Builder and App Method, develop the apps as normal. You can develop them as ad hoc apps or whatever floats your boat. You can put them on development devices. So you're using the normal method of registering your device as developer device. Do what you like with the app, and that's how I usually develop it. And then when you're ready to distribute it, that's when you've got to code sign it with the enterprise certificate. Until it's signed with that enterprise certificate, any device you want to put it on is going to have to be a development device, and I think it's 100 per year that Apple allow you. So, I get where people are coming from. Some people have said, well, couldn't I just, put the devices as development devices? You'll soon run out of IDs, and there are certain ramifications to having them as development devices. The answer is develop them as normal. When you're ready to distribute it, that's when you sign it with the enterprise certificate, and off you go.
Yeah, and that again falls into the category of you might be able to pull it off, but Apple says that this is the way you do it. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think Apple are trying to stop people using apps per se in an ad hoc sense, but the enterprise certificate, that's why they want you to go through and get this Dun & Bradstreet number. It's clearly they're trying to make sure that you're a corporate body and that you're trackable and traceable. I know what happens when the certificates expire because I've seen someone do that, and the apps will immediately stop launching. They won't work because the certificate gets rescinded, and your device, unless you've got absolutely no way of your certificate chain being updated, it'll get updated quite quickly with that expired certificate, and the apps will just fail to launch. You'll try to run them, and they'll stop working.
So let's say you're a software consultant, and you have a number of clients that want you to develop apps for them.
That's exactly my scenario.
Okay, so can you just pay the $299 once for yourself, and then let all your clients make them authorized users?
No, and the reason is that the enterprise certificate is tied to that Dun & Bradstreet number, and I suppose you could get away with it, but I would say not to do that because it's illegal. Effectively, I mean, you're breaking the terms of the contract that you have with Apple. When you sign up for this enterprise certificate, they ask you to fill out a lot of paperwork. It's all electronic, but you are getting your financial director, or you in the case of that, and signing up and saying you're going ahead with it. I am a independent contractor, and so my customers pay the $299, register with the program, and then they add me to their team. So I'm paying my usual $99 per year as an Apple developer. The thing is that every year they're going to pay that $299. In the general scheme of things, I don't think $299 is that much money for someone to pay if they're a corporate body. It's not cheap, but $299 to have that app running, I don't see it's going to be a major barrier to most people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they're that small that they're worried about that, then one assumes that they could just use ad hoc because they're going to have less than 100 devices anyway, and they could just issue them to 100 devices and off they go.
Yeah.
I know that TestFlight recently, they also increased their number of devices, I think, to 1,000 now as well. So it might be worth looking at what TestFlight can offer to people as well.
Okay, that's good option too. So let's say your employer has a DUNS number, but it's a large company, maybe with many divisions. Would they have more than one DUNS number?
As far as I'm aware, no. The people that I work with, I'm sorry, just one second. See, that's like being Marco Cantu all over again, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's the perils of working from home. Yes, what happens is when you apply for the DUNS number, I'm not sure what happens in big divisions. If you were, say, some kind of large multi-domain corporate, so you had offices in, say, Australia and 5 in the US, and they were different trading organisations, maybe Dun & Bradstreet would issue different numbers, but something that they would need to find out when they go to the Dun & Bradstreet site. So that site's got some fairly comprehensive, you see the link on the screen at the moment that says get a DUNS number.
Yeah.
They've got some quite comprehensive information about what that means and how it's assigned to you and how they assess you. It's not really a credit check, it's more of an existence check, if you like.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody else last night that does that, and they said they like call you up on the phone and make sure you exist and all this sort of stuff. So there's
and they ask you to, I think, for certain companies, it depends. Maybe they do random checking in different ways, but I know they get people to send back certain things like letterheads and stuff like that to prove that they're trading. And I assume if they're doing some due diligence, they must check that you've got a registered company number or some other form of presence that they can validate. It wouldn't be difficult. The majority of people, I know some small organisations that stumbled over it but managed to get through it. So it's not impossible, even for companies that are small and just starting out.
So is there an upper limit to the number of phones that you can be installed on? Like, say you're some huge corporation.
No. As far as I'm aware, there is no upper limit. The number of devices are not registered in the, with ad hoc devices, you actually add all of the devices into the Apple center there. But with Enterprise, there's absolutely no restriction. Anybody could install it and in fact have. I don't know what the upper limit is, but I'm aware of one of my customers with over 1,000 devices. So I think it's more than 1,000 if there is a restriction.
I was talking to someone last night, and they said they talked to somebody that had 43,000 iOS devices running.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, if you had something like a bank or something like that had an internal app, they tend to have substantial numbers of employees, and it wouldn't be very difficult for someone to breach a couple of thousand quite quickly. Yeah, I know for certain there's no restriction. I've had, physiotherapists. There was a Canadian physiotherapist, for example, who was working for an organisation in Nebraska in the US, and they installed the app because they needed to use it, and it was fine, absolutely fine. So geographic restrictions and things like that, there just aren't any, as far as I'm aware.
So, Ian, can you compare and contrast the difference between enterprise and ad hoc?
Well, from our point of view as developers, the only difference really is the way that we sign the apps. Because when we go into the Delphi provisioning sections where you put in your distribution certificate details, normally, if you're going to distribute an ad hoc app, you've actually gone into the Apple certification portal, I suppose that's the name for it. And there's a section there where you say ad hoc, and then you have to tell it what the individual device IDs are. So with an ad hoc app, if you're going to distribute an ad hoc app, it needs to know who's going to have this ad hoc app before they can install it. And it's a certificate thing, that's how it's controlled. And with an enterprise app, that is a similar thing. It's an ad hoc app. It doesn't again go into the App Store, but there is no knowledge of the devices. I have no idea which unique devices are installing the app, and it doesn't make any difference to me because they deal with the customers that they've paid me for my time, and they install as many as they like, and as long as they keep paying their Apple fee every year and the certificates are renewed, the apps will continue to work.
So is ad hoc the 1,000 or the 100 device limit? Or
yeah, that's the one with the device limit of 100 devices, and it's 100 devices per year. So you can have 100 devices this year and a whole different 100 devices next year, but all of the ones that you had this year, if they're not the same, will drop off. You have to remove them.
So if you have 100, or if you have 50 devices first 3 months and then 50 different devices second 3 months, you're out of devices.
100 per year.
Even if you're not using any of the other ones before.
I think, I'm not sure, but I think you can't delete them. Otherwise, you would just put them on on the certificate and then remove them and say, this person's going to use this app. Let's say you were a conference organizer and you wanted to give out an app to people that would allow them to take part in the conference, or some kind of additional media that was played through this app. Every time you ran a conference, you would get everybody to install this app, and off they go. And then as soon as the conference was over, you'd remove them all again and add another 100 people. And as far as I'm aware, that's something that wouldn't be possible.
Right. That's my understanding too. Is that you have to. They stay on your account until the end of the year, and then at the end of the year they say, "Do you want to reset and get rid of these?"
I believe it's a calendar year, actually.
Yeah, calendar year. Yep.
Yeah, so it would be a rolling 12 months. So if you put 50 on in January and another 50 on in August, once you came around to January again, you get 50 more.
Yep.
And that's how it seems to work. So.
And so, how does enterprise app distribution compare to regular app store distribution?
There's no, you're not going through the App Store approval process. Your apps aren't approved at all. Apple doesn't touch your app. The only thing is that you go in and put the certificates in. So there is no, you've got to adhere to this type of set of rules or something like that. And that's the key difference in terms of an App Store app. There are things like, it's too similar to the calculator app. This was the big hoo-ha it was on at the moment. One of the popular calculator apps was just thrown out of the App Store and then put back in again after they had a change of heart. That doesn't happen with an enterprise app because you never go through the approval process. There's no waiting for Apple. You design the app, and I could have had everybody installing David I's app straight away if they wanted to.
Right.
But of course, we're not going to do that. So, does that answer the question?
That answers your question. How can if you wanted to have your company develop apps for customers, what would that look like? Would it have to go through the App Store, or could there be a different way of doing that?
Again, if you're going to, when you say customers, it depends if you mean individual single customers or, a customer which is a corporate customer.
Okay. So
if you were talking about individual customers, I don't know. What's the difference? If to me, a customer could be a corporate customer, in which case you're going through the process of designing the app for that customer, and then they sign up to the enterprise program. Off you go. If you are talking about individual single customers who are buying your apps, well, you can either do it for the App Store and your customers download it through the App Store, and then if you're giving it away for free, that's fine. But if you're selling it, then Apple are going to take their cut out of the app. But if you are designing an ad hoc app, then you're going to distribute it either through the methods that Apple provide, or dropping them onto the devices manually or something like that. And again, you need to know the device IDs.
So if you're just writing an app for a small company, then that company would probably want to be either do an ad hoc distribution if it's like only 12 devices, or
again, it depends if they know what the device IDs are.
Yeah, okay, if they know the device IDs.
Yeah, I mean, if they know the device IDs and they have control over those devices, so it's not someone's personal phone, for example, then if you know you haven't got high turnover, let's say they've got 25 employees, but they are rotating, you know, they're seasonal workers or something like that, and you give them some app for working during the, I don't know, summer season or the winter season or something like that. You've got to remember you've got that restriction of 100 devices for the 12 months. If you're going to give these apps out in other ways, then you can use the enterprise scheme for that. $299. I don't know, you know, how many people are you going to have using that device, using that app, sorry, at $299. If you divide that down by, say, 10, 15 devices, if the app's that useful to you, then I'd imagine most people would say, okay, well, you know, it's worth it because of the turnover of people and the convenience of being able to install the app on any device without any special configuration. I mean, one person says here in the question, what's Apple's cut? They take 30%. So, and that's if you charge. There are enterprise schemes as well. There are ways of distributing Apple apps that are bulk apps. I forget what they're.
Oh, that's right. I remember hearing about they were.
Yeah, custom B2B apps they call it. And what happens is you set a tariff for these apps. And so you might say, oh, each app is $10 or something like that. And the customer can then purchase a bulk number of these apps. So they might buy 100 of these apps or something like that. They don't effectively go through the App Store. They go through a slightly different portal. But they can what's the word I'm looking for? Redeem. They have these special codes that they can redeem for these apps. So they buy the bulk thing as a bulk purchase. They then redeem these codes and install the app. So it's almost as if you're getting like a gift card out of the store or something like that, and using the gift card. That's great. It means that almost anybody can use your apps like that, and the business is saving money. The downside is, of course, that if it's chargeable, then you're paying your 30% off to Apple. And I'm not entirely sure because I've not used this method, but I think they also vet the app as well. So it goes through the approval process as well. So I'd imagine that would be the case because generally speaking, when you've got some way of them charging money, they tend to make sure that you're not also going to subvert their system, if you see what I mean.
Right.
That's mainly, I mean, the thing I like about iOS as a developer and as a user is the fact that Apple are doing that they are checking that you're not using unpublished SDKs, you're not doing something that they disagree with, your application is not draining the battery. If you're using the enterprise scheme where you're not going through the App Store at all, or the ad hoc app scheme where you're sending it off and installing on your 100 devices, of course, you don't go through that process. You could make some horrible mistakes. That's a business decision for you as a developer, whether you're prepared to take that risk. But you know, we're all doing that through Windows. I don't know anybody really that tends to use the Windows store to sell their apps. They tend to you know, have them on some website or something like that and sell them that way. And you've got the same risk. So you know, conceptually, it's the same thing.
Yeah. One thing I've heard reports about is that if, let's say, you are you're wanting to distribute something to enterprise customers and you decide to go through the App Store, and maybe you're going to make it free through the App Store, people have to buy a license from you directly in order to get that.
Apple have rules about that.
Yeah, they will say, "Oh, well, then whatever that license fee is, we're going to take a third of that as well."
No, they in fact don't do that. What they do is they prevent you from doing that. I forget which company it was that did that recently, but they actually will not allow you. There are lots of rules about being able to say, oh, you have to go to this website and register this way. They specifically do not allow you to do that. And if you look at the App Store guidelines, there are an awful lot of rules about how you can charge subscriptions. it's okay if you've got a kind of software as a service kind of model where your app is connecting to some kind of system like Instagram or Facebook or something like that. And if you charged for people to use Facebook, perhaps that would be allowed. But Apple actually would say, well, if you're going to allow people to sign up via your website, you also have to include a sign up page in the app. So, it can get tricky. With the enterprise program, it's not really intended for that. The idea is that they're in-house use apps or apps for use within your enterprise. And, that's how they're working it.
Yeah, like I was just thinking the example would be like the Uber app where you can get a car here in the States, at least. You're not making the purchase through in-app purchase because you give Uber your credit card number directly and they bill you for the car. But
they would probably view that as almost like a social networking app, because what you're doing is putting people in connection with each other. And I don't believe you pay via the Uber app. I think you actually have to go into pay the guy himself. Is that right?
You do pay through the Uber app. I just used a couple.
Okay. Well, maybe
it's actually kind of cool. You just take a picture of your credit card and it reads the information out of your card, and then when you get the car, after you get out, you get an email or a notification saying, "Oh, you just paid X dollars for that ride."
Right. I don't know. I mean, I've seen Apple do some sort of slightly suspicious we're doing things for friends kind of rule changes where all of a sudden you think, I'm sure you weren't allowed to do that in the rules. And
yeah.
You find that some very big corporate body is doing exactly what you're not supposed to do. And you think,
exactly.
Yeah. So they obviously have a little scheme where if you are a favoured developer and making them enough money, perhaps they can come to an arrangement, shall we say. I'm not big enough like that. So.
David points out, it says you're not paying through the app, you're paying after you use the app.
Oh, okay.
So apparently that's
that could well be
the differentiation.
Yeah, I mean, all their rules are really designed, first of all, to protect the user, but secondly, to make it so that Apple are making their money.
Yep.
What can I say? I don't think it's a bad thing that they want to make money. I just think it's one should be aware, shall we say, that is part of the ethos of how they do things. They don't sell things cheap, and they don't. They believe that you should pay for their services because the services are great. Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
I wish their cut was smaller. That's the only thing. I mean, as a point I made in the talk as well was that this is a way for independent developers to make considerably more money without having to give up big chunks of it to Apple. You are being paid for different types of things like your consultancy and your time, and that's what we as developers, particularly Delphi developers, are doing. We are designing applications typically for a corporate or something like that, and being paid for our time as developers rather than producing an application that someone downloads. You can do that. And in fact, one of my friends has developed an app just recently, and he's got over 1 million downloads. And I believe he's making money from the advertising on that. And sadly, it's not written in Delphi, but that's one of those things. But it's a game, so you can make money, but you've got to work very hard to do that. And I personally believe that enterprise apps are a more lucrative way of making money. That's my spin on it.
Yeah, I think that, and there's. You always hear the stories about the first guy to make the fart app or the first guy to make the flashlight app, and they make a lot of money. But
specifically prevented now in the App Store. Actually, they specifically say that.
Yeah, and so exactly. And then you have they're the one, they were the exception, but then the majority of the money, and there's a lot of short reports showing this, is in the enterprise app development because you can make a lot more money that way through like exactly you're talking about enterprise app distribution.
Yeah, I mean, there are people saying that in the question, incidentally, we have hundreds of questions. We're not going to get to them all, just not. But people saying 30%, not that much to pay Apple. Okay, fine. I agree. And I don't think it's a problem either. And another person saying they've been making money on apps developed with Delphi since 1998. Me too. All of my income comes from Delphi programming. So I'm totally agreeing with that. But the reality is now, if you want to make apps in the future, you cannot ignore Delphi as a mobile development tool. You have to be getting onto mobile, because that's the way things are heading. Things are getting smaller, things are getting more portable, and although I'm obviously a fan of Delphi and I'm a speaker on Code Roadshow, you'd expect me to be slightly biased, but it speaks for itself that if I can sit there and I can make an app like that I did with David I's face there, in a couple of seconds, I know that that's probably going to run on most Android devices, not all of them, but that's partly because of the Android ecosystem. The same app can then run on iOS, and the same app can run on Windows, and next year probably Linux server as well. What can I say? You know, it's that's why we should all be using Delphi. You cannot do that with other apps. You can't say these. You know, if you use another development system, that the apps are going to be more reliable and less crashing and things like that. Because I can tell you from experience of 30 plus years of development, Delphi is the language that makes it possible for me to develop apps with a very small team of people, i.e. me and a few others, go out to thousands of customers, because I develop apps for big corporates in the UK that are distributing to end users who are selling to normal people in normal offices and normal customers who have every type of Windows operating system, and they never crash. We could not physically support the number of customers that are using the apps if it wasn't such a stable and useful development system. What can I say?
Yeah. Totally agree with you. And actually, I've had the opportunity to speak to other like Android developers that are not using Delphi, and I'll do, hey, this is what we do, and and then I'll like, okay, I'm going to make a database driven app in 5 minutes, and I walk them through what I'm doing, and they're just like, whoa, and they're blown away. They can't believe that I'm able to do that, and like, oh, and by the way, it's running on iOS now too, and oh, here, look, it's running on Windows, and now it's running on Mac, and yeah. Yep.
You know, there's a saying in the poetry world that when they do the, as people may or not know, I'm a poet, but they always say, don't put poetry on the poster, because people won't come if they see the word poetry. And it's true with Pascal. If you say Pascal, the app's developed in Pascal, people go, Pascal? Really? But if I instead show them the app and say, oh, yeah, I can do that app. Here we go. Bing, 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 and design the app. Nobody cares that it's written in Pascal until a little bit later when they go, really? It's written in Delphi. I go, yep, it is.
Yep.
Do you care? No. Does the app work? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got a few more questions here. And actually, we do have some time because the next session isn't going to happen, so I got to fill some space here.
Right. Well, there you go.
If you wanted to distribute an app to a small company, let's say with 10 users, this enterprise program would be too much for them. And since we are talking about only 10 possible user devices, then I assume the best way to go in this case is ad hoc app. Would you agree?
Yes, totally agree. Yeah. It depends how valuable the app is to them. Yes, I mean, 10 people, why would you pay $299 if you don't need to? If you know the device IDs, or you can get the device IDs, then there's absolutely no reason to go in the enterprise program.
And so I guess a differentiator there would be if they were 10 devices that the company owned, then you would have access to the device IDs. But if they weren't devices the company owned, as you mentioned earlier, let's say if they were employee devices, then it gets a little trickier.
I mean, as long as you can get the device ID and you know they're going to be reasonably stable, and don't forget, people change their phones as well. The device ID will change if you upgrade from an iPhone 5 or something like that to an iPhone 6. All of a sudden you got a new device ID. But if the population of the devices is fairly stable, then why not do ad hoc? Yeah. Totally agree. I'm not saying this is the only way to develop apps. I'm just saying that this is one of the ways to develop apps. So ad hoc is a completely reasonable alternative for people where it's not logical economically for them to do it.
So David says he just signed up as a beta tester yesterday through TestFlight, and it actually extracted his device ID directly so that they would have it.
Right.
So yeah, TestFlight is Apple's beta distribution option that they actually bought it. There was a different company started it.
Well, it was always a way of distributing apps and having a lot of metrics about how the app was being used and tracking where the apps were and things like that. So it it was always a great product. I personally don't use it, but that's because I haven't needed to. But I have looked at it and signed up for it and done things with it in the past. So I know a little bit about it, but it was a no-brainer for them to buy it, as far as I'm concerned. It was just so great. It was a very compelling reason why they should go off and pour some of their great big buckets of money towards it. So.
Yeah. So here's another question. Can an app developed for a corporate customer that is aimed at their own customers be distributed via the App Store, be protected with a password that is distributed to the corporate customers, its own customers? So I guess trying to say put it in the App Store, but not make it usable unless somebody has a password to get to it?
So they develop an app and they put a password in it and put it up on the App Store. Is that what you were just saying?
That's what I'm guessing it's trying to say. Distributed via the App Store and be protected with a password that is distributed to the corporate customers so its own customers are able to use it.
I don't think that's allowed under Apple's rules, but I could be wrong. As far as I'm aware, you would just have some kind of scheme to have authentication or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of this you're going to probably want to check with, make sure that you read the Apple.
There you go.
Oh yeah,
I'm sorry about that.
I was just elaborating, saying that always is a good idea to check the license agreement, because it does change from time to time, and maybe even consult with an attorney or solicitor to find out the best course of action for moving forward with some of these different ideas.
Yeah, and that would be my advice as well, is don't take my word for it, because I'm just a developer like the rest of you. Look at what Apple are saying, and look at the implications of how you're wanting to use the apps and how you're wanting to do things, because you don't want to fall foul of the law. They've got an awful lot of weight behind them, and you're not going to be arguing with Apple. You're not going to make them change their mind.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. Plenty of people said, "Oh, I think Apple should do this." And Apple follow the route that they think is appropriate, and who can blame them?
Yeah, and I was thinking, a lot of people ask and say, "Well, I got working for a smaller business or whatever." It would seem to me personally, I would probably always recommend that the company I was consulting for join the enterprise program, but say, here's the pros and cons, and let them make that choice, because you don't want to say, "Oh yeah, we can do it ad hoc," and then run out of licenses or run out of devices or something like that, and have them say, "Well, hey, this isn't what I signed up for." So,
well, you can. There are ways around that. I mean, they can release another version of that app that is a new app, if you see what I mean.
Oh yeah.
And it is 100 per app.
Oh, it's 100 per app. Okay.
Yeah, and also when they create the app ID and the certificate signing, there's no validation of what that certificate is. Since it's ad hoc, it never touches Apple apart from the certificate. So you could release 10 versions of the app and then have 1,000 people using that app. You want to do that, that's fine, but that's quite a lot of work. But just imagine, all of a sudden iOS 9 comes along, and there's a breaking change in iOS 9, for example, that means that your app has to be changed in some way. You've then got to go through 10 of those apps and then manually update those device IDs to all of the 1,000 devices that you've got. I would say that's not a very sensible thing to do. And there are some issues as well. People say, I could just do this. I could just send the apps off to people, and I can have random people install it, and it wouldn't be a problem because that's fine. But look at the amount of times that Apple have just done something like they did recently, making some changes that break all sorts of things in apps. I'll give you an example of the website. They suddenly decided you must use SSL when you install the apps via the website. Did not tell anybody. It was not something that anybody realised. It caught us all by surprise. The first I knew about it was I got a urgent phone call from people saying, "We can't install any of the apps. Oh no, we've got a load of new starters today and they need to install this app." Apple do things like that. Do you really want to be trying to ship off a load of devices without any form of metrics or tracking in it whatsoever? you've got to hard code those device IDs in. If you've got several hundred people with hard coded device IDs in spread across several apps that are ad hoc apps, really, you're going to try and track those and notify all of them? Nah, I would say that's not a very sensible.
Yeah, at some point
way
you
to
need to
do
decide
things,
what the return on investment is for your time compared to the $200 difference in price.
Correct. And a couple of apps, it's probably not going to be a problem. But once you write one app, you are going to for sure end up with several apps. That's what's happened to me, and I'm no different from anybody else. I think once you produce an app that people find useful, they will either say, well, we want another one that does this, or, oh, I don't suppose you can do that. It happens to be all the time. The minute someone knows I'm an app developer, in fact, I was in a car today, someone said to me, oh, I've got this idea for this app. And, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
And then I say how much I want, and they suddenly don't really need it quite as much.
Of course, usually they're in love with their idea, and they're like, I'll tell you what, I'll let you make the app, and you can use my idea.
Yeah, it's always, everything's possible until it's not possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest problem is with development that everything is actually possible, and sometimes you have to pick and choose what you want to do.
Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting questions. There are people saying that, have you noticed the time? Yes, we are aware of the time.
Oh, yeah. Is that, yeah. So,
and I'm sorry about my dog and the doorbell. Marco Cantu is now completely excused from his dog barking all the time because my dog, would you believe there's a pizza guy turned up? My daughter's going, oh, there's a pizza guy. And the dog's trying to kill him. And
oh my.
Great.
Yeah, so the our next session, the BD to Fireback documentation, unfortunately ran into some problems and is not going to be aired. So we're going to work through these questions here, and then we'll see what we can do to see where we're at with time. So
I'm fine with this. There's no problem. It seems to be something that a lot of people want to ask questions about. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of good questions here. So next question is, let's say you do sign up for the Enterprise Developer Program, and then end of the year you don't renew that program. Do your apps all cease working at that point?
Yes. What will happen is as soon as your enterprise certificate expires, and that will expire on the anniversary of you creating it, and that's when you signed up to the program and first signed in and did it, the apps will stop working. So, the answer is $299 a year, or whatever your local currency equivalent is to ensure that they keep running.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there, so then people commented about this is a pro for Android. So the Android store also takes 30%, the Google Play Store.
Correct.
But you do have the option of distributing it without going through the Play Store. There's no restriction on that if they enable unknown devices.
The thing about an Android app as well is that there are lots of alternative Android stores, so to speak. When I've done Android stuff, people have said, we use this Amazon site or something like that, and Google and a few others. Yeah, I mean, they do take a cut, and you don't have the same restrictions. If you click the little checkbox on Android to say allow installation from any source, then yes, people can install it. But not everybody's going to want to click that. I certainly wouldn't want to click that because I don't want someone, I could write an Android virus in 5 minutes and people install it. It wouldn't be possible to do that with iOS. I mean, it probably would, but it would be difficult to get away with it in the iOS store because of the way that they tend to filter through. There's been a few people try and push the envelope in the iOS App Store. Some guy claimed that he'd got some way of capturing information, but I think that was actually very quickly put down. So. Someone says, isn't Android the new Windows when it comes to viruses?
Well, in some ways, I mean, there have been viruses on OS 10 and on Linux, and was the first virus was on, I can't remember what OS it was, but it wasn't Windows. It was Unix.
There was Unix. The cookie virus was around a long time. Yeah. I started out on Unix and Vaxes and things like that, and the cookie virus was around way before Windows and DOS even existed. So.
And so one of the reasons that Windows is a popular virus target is because it's so prolific. And so, yeah, in that regard, Android is very prolific as well. So maybe.
Well, the thing about Windows is it's designed for a mass market, so less sophisticated, technically sophisticated users. And also the people that are distributing those viruses are smarter. You know, some of the virus writers are easily some of the best coders you'll come across. You know, there's a lot of trickery, and certainly on the web, there's an awful lot of trickery going around as well. Android is attracting that kind of market because it's so widely adopted. I read somewhere recently that there are more Android devices than there are Windows devices.
Yes, well, there is. Yeah.
If you're a virus writer, then why wouldn't you target Android? It's about you know, mud against the wall, as they say. The more people you can target, the more chances you are of. You've only got to get lucky 0.1% of the time to make a lot of money. What is it they say? The president has to be lucky all the time, but the assassin only has to be lucky once, and that's really the case for us as well. That, you know, we have to be lucky all the time when we're using apps and things like that. And the virus writers only got to be lucky once and get what they want, and we're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, and you know, to be fair, iOS isn't immune, because there was the issue a while back that it was common for iOS apps to collect all your contacts and post them to their server.
Well, I mean, there are legitimate applications that do things that you might not agree with as well. The thing that changed in iOS 8 was that they could track your location in the background, but they started warning about it. So if you use a Facebook app and you swap to another app, you'll see now a blue bar that comes up that warns you that Facebook's tracking your location in the background. Whether that's a virus or not, it's not really strictly a virus, because, you know, it's designed behavior, but some people might see it as undesirable behavior, and you know, it's got through the App Store.
Yeah, and what one person's undesirable behavior might be, you know, desirable for somebody else. Maybe you want people to know where you're at, so it's just important that the user is aware, you know, whether it be through permissions or a blue bar or whatever, so that they know what's going on.
Yeah, and you know, when you go through the certification process, even for an enterprise app, you've still got to tick the right boxes to enable things like notifications and stuff like that. You can't just magically do everything you want. That certification process, actually, when the person goes to install, you couldn't see it on my little demo because I'd already installed an app that used that certificate. But first of all, it will tell you who the enterprise certificate is. And secondly, it will then tell you about the individual website that's trying to install that app. If I had got something like notifications enabled or location information, both of which tracked, it would have come up with a warning and said, yeah, the Code Rage app 1 is going to use your location. Do you want this, yes or no? And then you've actually got to specifically approve it. So it's not the Wild West. You know, there are still operating system level restrictions in there.
Yeah. So here's another question, a little more off topic, but Keith wants to know anyway. Since you've written apps for large UK companies, are they database driven? And if so, were they stateful? And what was the most number of attachments did you have with DataSnap?
Right. First of all, a lot of the stuff I do is with MySQL, and I don't use DataSnap. So that may answer that question. Other apps have used other types of database technology as well, including you know, various types of SQL and various embedded databases, including an Interbase, actually. Were they stateful? What do you mean by that? If you're talking about a Windows app, which was really what I was referring to in terms of thousands of installed bases. The iOS, not so much. I mean, we're talking about a couple of thousand, I'd imagine, all told, but that's not how they work. A lot of the ones that I've written in iOS have been things that are specific to the mobile device. So there was a lot of REST servers involved, for example, to gather information. They wanted private contact books and things like that. Over here in America, there's a thing called the HIPAA law that is to do with passing personal medical information around. and they needed some apps that would allow you to contact things like pharmacists and doctors directly without having those contact information going into a shared address book or anything like that. They also used a thing called a wound camera. If you're a nurse, it sounds a bit gross, but it's not as bad as it sounds. Some of the nurses are treating people post-operative, so they've had things like amputations or something like that. What happens is that the wounds and the are monitored by the nurses, and they take pictures of them. Because of the HIPAA laws, those pictures are private for that customer, for that service user, I think you call them. They are not allowed to go up on something like Facebook, even by accident. There must be absolutely no possible chance that that kind of thing can become public. And so this wound camera can take those pictures, compress them, encrypt them, send them up to a specific server, ensure there aren't any faces in them, for example. It can do face detection and say, there's a face in there, you're going to retake this picture so that there isn't a face in there. There can be no identifying information about the patient apart from a unique number. That's one of the apps. So, you know, I'm a jobbing programmer. I'm paid to do things and all sorts of variety of apps.
So Alan says, let's assume I have finished my new Shiny app. How long will it take to get it into my customers' 12 iPads via ad hoc?
As quick as you can drag and drop them if you're doing it that method. If you're saying ad hoc rather than enterprise, which is what this presentation is talking about, with enterprise, it's as quickly as they can go to the web page and click on the link, if that's how you're doing it. If you're using something like MDM, which is the mobile device management app that Apple use, again, it's almost instantaneous if they're all connected. If you're doing it via ad hoc, i.e. you are getting them to provide their device IDs, assuming you've got the device IDs and you've got the IPA package somewhere. Again, it's instant. Not waiting for the App Store approval. There's no delay in that sense. In reality, it's not that quick because there's always something. You know, you've got a device ID wrong or some other problem like that, or the website is not accessible, or you've got to upload it up onto there. But really, it's as quick as you can think of it.
Yeah, that's true. It's always the best case scenario and the reality. Doesn't always in the agreement.
I mean, with the App Store, you would assume that it would be you upload your app and it's approved in a couple of hours or minutes or something like that, and it goes live, and hey presto, everything's good. But the reality is that most people are finding that their apps could take a couple of days, and sometimes they're sitting around for a week or two waiting for their apps to be reviewed. And that presumably is a function of how Apple review App Store apps, that they run them through some automated tests, and assuming they come through those and out the other side with no problems, then perhaps it's quicker. I know that updates are usually 24 hours. So if you've got an update to an app that's been around for a while and has been previously approved, then it's a lot quicker than an app that's the first time through the App Store. So and because with ad hoc and enterprise you're not going through that process, then it's far quicker. There's nothing to There's nothing to stop you having all the devices sitting on your desk once you run the compile and just drop them in. Off you go.
Yeah.
Minutes,
Yeah. The typical App Store turnaround seems to be about 2 weeks.
It's a random number.
a random number, but it's. I think it seems like most times I've seen App Store permissions. It's usually about 2 weeks. Although if a new version of iOS just came out, then you can expect that to go up as well. Or new devices.
And also they do have blackouts as well.
That's true.
Here, as you know, Jim, we have Thanksgiving. They tend to close down for that. They also have other blackouts as well. I forget when the next one is, but they will close down for a couple of days or a day. So that can affect things. And of course, Christmas and other times, And if they're releasing a new version of iOS, then they tend to email developers beforehand and say, okay, now you can submit your apps for the new version of the operating system. But all this thing goes together, to slow things down.
Yeah.
it's not a quick process for anybody. If you think you're going to make an awful lot of money, go and buy Delphi and write an app today and then have it on sale tomorrow in the App Store. It's just not going to happen. And Google aren't much better. So
yeah. So there is a tutorial though for ad hoc distribution, Alan. I just gave you the link for that in the doc wiki. If you're wanting to do ad hoc distribution, we have a tutorial in there.
Cool.
And also, for the BDE to FireDAC session, like I mentioned, didn't happen, unfortunately. But there is a tutorial also in the doc wiki for BDE to FireDAC migration, which I realize is not a good substitution for Lachlan's great presentation he had planned and was working on, but unfortunately it just wasn't able to happen today. So
that's a shame. He's a good speaker as well.
he is, and he had another great session on picking data access layers, but he just had a lot of stuff going on, and unfortunately didn't get it all done.
I'm actually doing a talk where I think he might be chairing it for Australians in November sometime, actually.
Oh, excellent.
It might be. I'm not sure. I don't think it's the Australian Delphi Users Group. It's something along those lines. It is about this specific subject. So,
Alan says, thanks for all the answers.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad everybody's found it useful, or they seem to. I mean, I haven't had many people say how rubbish it's been, so that's a good start. You usually know you're on a good trend when people are asking sensible questions that seem to apply to what you were talking about. So.
Yep.
So someone's asking about preferred installers for Mac OS X. That's
exactly.
It's a question I can give them an answer to. There are no preferred installers, and there are lots of packages available that do it.
Yeah, the most common scenario I found on Mac OS X. Well, so you can distribute through the Apple App Store, the Mac. I guess it's the Mac App Store, whatever it's called.
Correct, and that's a separate developer program as well, so it's another $99.
Yep, and then you can also, the most common scenario I've seen is that you put it in a disk image, and people grab the disk image and they open it up and they drag your app from the disk image into their apps folder. And
the DMG. Yeah, and that depends on the complexity of your app as well. But the thing that's great about OS X or OS X is that you can drag the thing and off it goes. That's one of the great things. And when you want to delete it, you just drag it over to the trash and again, it disappears. There are packaging tools out there and stuff like that, but I don't know, the DMG is just as good. Just depends on how you want to issue the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like Adobe and people like that don't always package things up. They use DMGs as well. So if the big companies can do it, I don't see why the little guys shouldn't do it as well.
Yeah. So one more question here. If you don't have a Mac, how can you deploy and compile your app to your iPhone?
Macincloud.com.
Mac and Cloud, yep.
Yeah, I'd absolutely guarantee that would be the best way if you do not have your own Mac. Or realistically, people say, can I borrow a Mac to do this? The answer is you could, but you'll find that as you're developing the app, you will need to, you can run things without the Mac being around, but very quickly you'll run into trouble. So Mac in Cloud is, for people that don't know it, is macincloud.com, I think. It's a cloud-based Mac. You sign up and you get given a Mac to use. You can pay, I think, per hour or per day or per month. They've got a little tariff on there. Delphi is perfectly capable of debugging your apps on that Mac in cloud and producing it and signing it and doing all the other things you need to do without ever having a physical Mac, if that's what you want to do. Personally, I use an actual genuine Mac. You don't need anything massive as well. So Mac in Cloud can be configured through PAS server, PA server, as Curtis is asking. The answer is that Mac in Cloud already has PA server installed on it. It's one of the things they do that I don't know whether they still do, but they did partner at one point with Embarcadero, and they have all of the necessary tools installed on the Mac instance that you connect to, including PA server, and they do keep it up to date. So
there was we had a partner with them for a while when we first introduced iOS development, because a lot of people didn't have Macs and they wanted to be able to try it out.
Correct, and I don't use them because I don't need to, because I've got my own Mac. But I have tried their system and it's absolutely fine. It's very fast. I've got a very fast cable connection here, so it doesn't slow me down to have things in the cloud. If you've got a very slow internet connection, then it's going to impact you, but not massively, because of the way that the remote configuration works. But you are sending a lot of data up to the cloud with an app, but it's not a huge amount because they're mobile apps. Then the other alternative is to get something like a Mac Mini, which are a lot cheaper. I forget the exact price. Oh, $1 an hour, says someone, which is not a lot. But if you get Mac Mini, you can debug on a Mac Mini. I personally use MacBook Pro 2010, mid-2010. It's not top of the range brand new machine. It has got a faster hard disk because I use it as a laptop, you know, but if the default configuration will work absolutely fine. So
yeah, you can pick up I was going to say you can pick up a used Mac Mini fairly cheap. So I mean, Mac and Cloud's great to start with. I know some people that stuck with it for quite a while and use Mac and Cloud a lot, especially because you can, you know, develop your app and run it on Windows, right?
Right.
With Delphi, yeah. And then when you're ready, say, okay, let's actually run on hardware and go through Mac and Cloud for that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's personal preference. Like I say, I prefer to have a physical device, but I like Macs anyway. I always say to people who have never used a Mac, it's the greatest laptop you will ever use. I won't get paid anything by Apple for saying that, but it's a fact. I'm a developer. I can pretty much choose whatever machine I like. I can write it off against Axis. So I could, you know, I do have Windows machines and I develop on Windows, and I've got a beast of a Windows machine for development. But as far as a laptop's concerned, the Mac is fantastic. So if you're going to invest in a laptop, get a Mac and you'll be able to do OS X and iOS development.
So we mentioned that there is an Apple Store for the Mac as well, or an App Store for the Mac as well. Is that required for distribution on OS X, or is there another option?
To be honest, I don't know. I think the problem you have is if you need to sign the apps, otherwise you get all sorts of warnings when you try to install it. I'm pretty certain that you can probably just compile it. Not sure what would happen if you don't have it. I've always used certificates, so I don't know, but I think you would probably fail in being able to produce the app because you don't have a certificate.
I think you can distribute it on OS X, but like you said, if you don't have a certificate signing it, then they might get a warning during installation or something like that.
Yeah, they have to actually do something different. They have to, I think it's function and right click or something, and then select open, because there is a gatekeeper on OS X, and that will prevent you from running unsigned apps and apps that you've downloaded from unknown internet sources and things like that. So it's designed to prevent the spread of viruses. I don't know. I mean, if someone has tried just creating OS X apps and haven't got certificates and things like that, just let us know and we'll answer the question. But I have always signed it, so I can only tell you my perspective from there. Mac Mini now, £400, says Alan, for new ones at John Lewis in the UK. Again, you don't need one. You can use Mac in Cloud.
Yep.
You know, there are alternatives.
Yep. And you can get a used Mac Mini too. It doesn't have to be a very new one.
No, you don't need anything particularly powerful either. The only difference with the power would be that, you're going to be waiting a little while whilst it compiles on the... when you actually go to create and build your iOS or your OS X app, the final step is actually getting the compiler chain on the actual Mac itself to do the building. This is not a failing of Embarcadero. It is actually just the way Apple do things. And you have the command line tools, and they're used to actually create the final package. So you do have to have a Mac, because that's what Apple make us do, have that Mac. Right. There's no getting away from it, Yep.
So there's the page for Mac and Cloud. They had prices there a second ago. Where did it go?
I think it's on the very first. There you go. I think the first little button tab that you see there.
The button tab.
Where they've got a go back to there. Yeah. Click on home. That's it. And then I think
there we go. Select
one of those
plan.
Little dots. There you go.
So $1 pay as you go. starts at $1 per hour, $20 per month for managed servers, and $50 a month for dedicated servers.
It's I mean, they're such good devices that, you know, it's almost, and they're not the only people that have these kind of cloud-based servers, but they are easily the most well-known, and I've certainly got personal experience of them. The Macs that they provide are completely loaded with everything, anything you could want.
Excellent. If they list out PA server on here still or not. I know, because, for a while. Yep, right there. RAD PA server XE7. So
XE7, exactly.
It's ready to go.
Yeah, off it goes. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, they even have instructions telling you how to configure your system. And you hit the button, and instead of connecting to a machine that is on your network somewhere, you're connecting to the Mac in cloud, and it will come back, and it looks exactly the same to users in Delphi. Looks exactly the same. You just won't know. Someone's saying you should use a 4K display Mac. 20. Yeah, sure. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Producing apps that work on 4K displays.
But I saw someone had more than 4K, like 8K now or something like that.
Yeah. Someone's saying there, by the way, mid 2010 cannot do it. Incorrect. I use a mid 2010. It does do it. I can tell you that.
Well, yours is a MacBook Pro.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And saying Mac Mini, maybe he's saying Mac Mini mid 2010.
Oh, I see. I understand. He's typo. Yeah. Okay.
It might. Yeah, that's hard. I'm not sure. Yeah.
I'm sure people have been using Mac Minis for a while. I mean, at least since XE4, I think was the first version that did this. What's that? 20. Okay, maybe. I don't know.
Not sure. Okay.
Oh, it says 5K max. Okay, whatever.
All right. Well, thanks, Ian. I think we've gotten through most of the questions here. I appreciate you helping field questions and help fill out some of the time here.
No problem. We are always pleased to see your Code Monkey video. So
I was going to say I could run the Code Monkey video one more time. Be the last
I'm
time.
fine for that. Yeah, I think I have to go and attend to pizza and wives and children and things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but it's great. And don't forget, repeatinformation.com/code rage 9, but the URLs are up there. If you've got any questions, just email me and I'll try my best to answer them.
Did you say repeatinformation.com?
On the Embarcadero. Repeating, the actual, I should probably get the, it's repeatinformation.com/code rage 9. That's all one word.
Okay. There it is.
There you go. So it's got the link in there to the special P list. You just need to open that in a text editor. And it's also got an example web page as well. It's the page I used with some bits taken out. Replace the bits between the percentage signs and you're ready to go.
Excellent.
Once you've got your enterprise license and all the rest of it.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, thanks again, Ian. This has been,
no problem.
Been great.
All right. Thanks a lot then, Jim.
Yep.
Bye-bye, everyone.
There's lots of things coming up in the question window now. So.
Excellent. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yep. Okay. Bye.
Bye.